MOHAI, or the Museum of History and Industry, is respected nationally and treasured locally as a dynamic, innovative museum where historical exploration inspires people to create a better future for themselves and their communities. We met with Leonard Garfield to learn why MOHAI is such an important asset to the city. And we discovered just how much this great area contributed to the success of our future. Now, tell me, MOHAI, what does that stand for?
Well, it stands for Museum of History and Industry. And really what it is the story of Seattle. Everything about this place, what makes it special, what makes it exciting. You can go way back into our history, but you can also take a look at our future. It's all here at MOHAI.
Yeah, I was walking around a little bit before you came and met me, and I said, this is more than you could see in a day, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's really filled with all kinds of things to explore, things to discover. Lots of fun really for everybody, kids all the way up to people older than us.
So let's go over some of the high points. I know we said let's pick the top 5 things here. I know it's not everything, but let's pick the top 5 and walk us through them.
Well, we've got thousands of things, but if I were to pick 5, I think I would start thousands of years ago and look at our Native American history. You know, Seattle has been around for millennia. It actually was named for a native chief, Chief Seattle, and we've got some great things in the museum that talk about those first Seattleites, the Duwamish and the Suquamish people.
Walking around the city itself, I noticed that's part of the culture here.
It's very much part of the culture. In fact, the native people taught the later arrivals, the Americans and the Europeans and the Asians, how to fish, how to live with the natural bounty of the Northwest. So we really owe a lot to our native culture.
Okay, and then what would be next?
You know, next I think I'd leapfrog into history and look at something that really means a lot to Seattle's history. The very first commercial plane ever made by Boeing.
Oh my goodness.
They call it the B-1, Boeing's first. This plane took off and it really launched the aviation era, and it really changed Seattle forever.
It looks scary. I mean, now probably back in that day that was state of the art, but boy, I can imagine getting in that thing.
Well, it's kind of a flying boat. In fact, boat builders built the fuselage and sailmakers made the wings. And it took off on the water right in front of the museum, and on its very first maiden voyage, it landed on this very flight path 30 years before this building was even constructed.
Well, and speaking of Boeing, that still is a big part of the city.
Oh, absolutely. Thousands of folks in our region work for Boeing, and we all really root for Boeing. Of course, it's the world's great airplane maker still, and it's a great part of Seattle history.
Wow. So, you know, it's funny, when I was walking around the museum, I realized how many things technologically came from this area.
You know, we're a hotbed of innovation. In fact, that's one of the themes we really emphasize at MOHAI. It's not just Boeing, it's businesses like Costco started here in Seattle.
That's right.
Starbucks, you love coffee? All innovated here with the great team at Starbucks. Of course, Amazon.com, that's a Seattle company, and of course, Microsoft. And in fact, if I were to pick a third stop, I'd take a look at our Microsoft collection. Because really the idea of putting a computer on every desk and having the software that allowed us to do everything from that computer really was born here in the Seattle area with Microsoft, and we've got some great stuff in the museum to tell that story.
I didn't realize how many businesses had spun off just from the Microsoft itself.
Yeah, it's really pretty amazing. You came up to Seattle, you might have booked your flight on Expedia. It was an outgrowth of Microsoft. You might have done all kinds of things online. A lot of those businesses started right here as outgrowths of Microsoft. So we've really used innovation here to cultivate an entire economy. And in fact, a little more than 50 years ago, we had a World's Fair in Seattle, 1962. It was called Century 21. We were already looking to the future. And that's where a lot of these early ideas of innovation took root. And we have a whole section here at MOHAI that talks about the World's Fair and some of the great ideas that grew out of that back in the 1960s.
You know, and people don't realize Seattle is also a hotbed for music and culture.
It really is. And if you go back a few years, you remember that we were the leaders in the grunge music scene. Nirvana and all those great groups. We still are music leaders. Macklemore, for example, is a Seattle artist, and we have a whole section in the museum that talks about our music history, our art history, the roots of culture in Seattle, which really are very interesting and in some cases have had an international impact.
So now, Where are we actually right now? I know we're near the Space Needle because when I was out in the parking lot, I saw it. Now, what area is this actually where we are?
So this part of Seattle is a neighborhood called South Lake Union, and it's really a booming part of the city. Long time ago, 100 years ago, it was kind of the industrial backwater. It's where the first timber mills were and where some of the industrial boat building took place. But these days, it's the headquarters of Amazon.com, of the Gates Foundation.
I saw it right over there, yeah.
Absolutely. Microsoft has offices here, and as you mentioned, we're not too far from the Space Needle itself. So South Lake Union is really in the center of Seattle. Lots of excitement, lots of great restaurants, and a beautiful lake right outside our front door.
Yeah, it's beautiful here. Well, thanks so much for having us.
Thanks for coming.
This place is absolutely mind-boggling because you can't do it all in a day.
You really can't. So come back tomorrow.
Come back tomorrow. I'm allowed.
You're allowed. I want
All right.
you.
Well, if I have time, I'll get back here.
Okay, great.
And the folks should realize that this is something they can bring the whole family to, have a day or two.
Absolutely, for the whole family, and we welcome everyone to come down.
Great. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here with us today. And until next time, just remember to
Enjoy.